When a woman craves an older man, she always tests him with these two questions. This is not about games. This is not about manipulation. This is not about seduction tricks or power plays. This is about psychology, maturity, and emotional truth. When a woman is drawn to an older man, what she is really drawn to is not age, not money, not status, not the lines on his face or the calm in his voice. She is drawn to regulation. She is drawn to stability. She is drawn to a nervous system that does not hijack the room. And whether she realizes it consciously or not, she will test for that, not because she wants to trap him, but because she needs to know if he is safe to trust, safe to admire, and safe to grow with. A woman who craves an older man is often tired, not physically tired, but emotionally exhausted. She has been in situations where words were loud and actions were quiet, where promises were dramatic and follow-through was absent, where attention was intense but inconsistent. And over time, the nervous system learns. It learns what chaos feels like. It learns what unpredictability does. And eventually, it starts craving the opposite. It starts craving grounded presence. It starts craving someone who doesn't need to perform confidence because he lives it. Someone who doesn't chase validation because he already knows who he is. So when she meets an older man, she doesn't test him by flirting harder or pulling away dramatically. She tests him with two deceptively simple questions. Questions that are rarely asked directly, but are always asked energetically. Questions that cut through charm and expose character. And if he answers them correctly, not with words, but with behavior, something shifts. Respect grows, attraction deepens, trust begins. The first question is this: can you handle my emotions without trying to control them? This question is everywhere. It shows up when she is stressed, when she is disappointed, when she is overwhelmed, when she is quiet, when she is expressive, when she is unsure. She is watching closely. Does he dismiss her feelings? Does he minimize them? Does he rush to fix them so he doesn't have to sit with discomfort? Does he become defensive, irritated, condescending, or patronizing? Or does he stay present? An older man who passes this test understands something critical. He understands that emotions are not problems to be solved, they are information to be understood. He doesn't panic when she feels deeply. He doesn't feel threatened by her intensity. He doesn't interpret her emotions as a challenge to his authority or competence. He knows that emotional containment is not about dominance. It's about capacity. And capacity comes from self-regulation. When she expresses frustration and he stays calm, she notices. When she disagrees and he listens instead of lecturing, she notices. When she cries and he doesn't shame her or withdraw, she notices. Because what she is really asking is, can I be fully human around you without being punished for it? Can I bring my full emotional range without you needing to shrink me, silence me, or manage me so you can feel comfortable? Many men fail this test without ever realizing it. They think being strong means being stoic. They think leadership means having the final word. They think maturity means emotional distance. But emotional distance is not maturity, it is avoidance dressed up as control. True maturity is the ability to remain grounded while someone else is activated. True strength is being able to hold space without losing yourself. An older man who understands this does not take her emotions personally. He does not interpret her mood as a referendum on his worth. He doesn't spiral into insecurity or dominance. He knows who he is, and because of that, he can allow her to be who she is. And that is intoxicating. That is rare. That is deeply attractive. The second question she is always asking is this: are your values consistent when no one is watching? This is the question beneath all questions. This is the question that determines whether admiration turns into trust or turns into disappointment. She is observing patterns, not statements, patterns, not intentions, patterns. Does he show up the same way when it's inconvenient? Does he keep his word when it costs him something? Does he treat people with respect when there is nothing to gain? Does his integrity exist only when it's visible, or does it exist when it's quiet? Older men are often assumed to be wiser, but age does not equal wisdom. Experience does not automatically produce integrity. Some people simply repeat the same year of their life over and over again and call it experience. She knows this. That's why she watches. That's why she tests. Not because she wants perfection, but because she wants coherence. Coherence is when your words, values, actions, and boundaries align. Coherence is when you don't have to perform decency because it is already embedded in how you live. When she senses coherence, she relaxes. Her nervous system stops scanning for danger. Her attraction becomes deeper, slower, and more rooted because now she is not just attracted to the man, she respects him, and respect is the foundation of lasting attraction. Without it, desire becomes anxious. With it, desire becomes stable. An older man who passes this test doesn't overpromise. He doesn't exaggerate. He doesn't need to impress. He is comfortable being clear, even if clarity risks disapproval. He understands that boundaries are not walls, they are frameworks. He knows what he stands for, and he is willing to stand alone if necessary. And that steadiness is powerful. This is why the dynamic works when it works. Not because of control, not because of imbalance, not because of dependency, but because of polarity rooted in safety. She feels safe to soften because he is solid. He feels energized because he is respected, not pedestalized. There is mutual recognition, not projection. But here is the part most people miss. These tests are not pass-fail exams, they are ongoing assessments. Because life changes, stress changes, circumstances change, and maturity is not something you achieve once and keep forever, it is something you practice. Every day, in small moments, in reactions, in pauses. An older man who remains attractive over time is not the one who never makes mistakes. It is the one who can take accountability without collapsing into shame or defensiveness, who can say, I see that I missed that, and I'm willing to do better. That level of accountability is rare, and it signals emotional adulthood. What repels her instantly is rigidity, the need to always be right, the inability to self-reflect, the belief that age alone entitles someone to authority. That is not maturity. That is insecurity wearing the mask of confidence. A woman who craves an older man is not looking for a father, and she is not looking for a savior. She is looking for a partner who has done his inner work, someone who has confronted his own patterns, his own wounds, his own defenses, someone who does not outsource emotional labor or expect admiration as compensation for presence. And this is where many misunderstand the dynamic. They think it is about power. But real power is not about control over others. It is about mastery of self. The man who cannot regulate himself will always try to regulate the people around him. The man who knows himself does not need to dominate anyone. When she senses that self-mastery, her attraction is not anxious. It is calm. It is intentional. It is grounded. She doesn't chase. She doesn't test aggressively. She observes. And if what she sees matches what she feels, she leans in. This is not a game to win. This is not a formula. This is an invitation to grow. Because whether or not a woman is watching, these two questions matter. Can you be present without controlling? Can you be consistent without performing? These are the questions that determine the quality of all your relationships, not just romantic ones. If you are an older man listening to this, understand this clearly. Your value is not in what you provide materially. It is not in how impressive your past is. It is not in how many people admire you from a distance. Your value is in your capacity to be emotionally available without being enmeshed, to be strong without being rigid, to be grounded without being detached. And if you are a woman listening to this, trust your intuition. You are not wrong for wanting stability. You are not asking for too much when you want consistency. You are not needy for wanting emotional safety. Your tests are not manipulative. They are protective. They are wise. They are informed by experience. At the end of the day, attraction that lasts is not fueled by intensity. It is fueled by trust. And trust is built slowly, quietly, through aligned behavior over time. That is what these two questions are really about. Not age, not roles, not power, but maturity, emotional adulthood, and the courage to show up as you are, consistently, even when no one is applauding. Because the man who can do that does not need to chase desire. Desire finds him. When a woman tests whether a man can handle her emotions without trying to control them, what she is really testing is his relationship with his own internal chaos. That may sound abstract, but it's actually very concrete. Every human being carries emotional volatility, uncertainty, fear, and desire. The difference between maturity and immaturity is not the absence of those forces, but the capacity to regulate them without projecting them onto others. And this is where many men misunderstand what emotional strength actually is. A man who becomes uneasy, dismissive, or irritated in the presence of a woman's emotional expression is not reacting to her feelings. He is reacting to his own lack of internal order. Her emotion becomes a mirror, and what he sees makes him uncomfortable. So he tries to shut it down. He minimizes it, intellectualizes it, or reframes it as irrational. Sometimes he calls it drama. Sometimes he calls it overreaction. But beneath all of that is the same psychological truth. He cannot tolerate emotional complexity because he has not learned how to sit with it inside himself. Now, contrast that with a man who has done the work of self-regulation. He understands that emotion is not an enemy of reason, it is its counterpart. Emotion tells you what matters. It signals value, it alerts you to misalignment. When a woman expresses frustration, sadness, or even anger, he does not hear an accusation. He hears information. He does not rush to correct or dominate the situation because he is not threatened by it. His identity is stable enough to remain intact in the presence of discomfort. This is why emotional containment is so powerfully attractive. Containment does not mean emotional distance. It means the ability to stay present without being hijacked. It means listening without collapsing into defensiveness. It means allowing someone else to feel fully without needing to manage their experience so you can feel safe. That capacity communicates something very deep at a psychological level. I can hold complexity without falling apart, and that is the essence of leadership, whether in relationships, families, or society. A woman senses this almost immediately. It shows up in how a man responds to disagreement. Does he escalate, dominate, or withdraw? Or does he slow down, ask questions, and remain engaged? It shows up when she is overwhelmed. Does he offer solutions prematurely, or does he first offer understanding? It shows up when she challenges him. Does his ego flare, or does his curiosity engage? These moments are not trivial. They are diagnostic. The reason this matters so much is because emotional safety precedes vulnerability, and vulnerability is the gateway to intimacy, creativity, and trust. A woman cannot soften in the presence of a man who needs her to be smaller, quieter, or more agreeable to maintain his sense of order. She will remain vigilant, guarded, and over time attraction erodes, not because of a lack of desire, but because the nervous system never receives the signal that it is safe to rest. An older man who truly embodies maturity understands that strength is not loud, it is not reactive, it is not performative. Strength is the ability to remain grounded while someone else is in motion. It is the ability to tolerate uncertainty without resorting to control. This is not passivity, it is disciplined restraint. It is the difference between a man who needs to win every interaction and a man who understands that some moments are not about winning, but about witnessing. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you cannot handle someone else's emotions, it is because you have not yet learned to handle your own. Emotional containment is not something you demand from others, it is something you develop internally. It comes from facing your own fears, your own insecurities, your own unresolved patterns. It comes from voluntarily confronting the chaos within you and building structure around it rather than pretending it doesn't exist. When a woman encounters a man who can do this, she feels it immediately. There is a sense of relief, a sense of grounding. Not because he fixes her, but because he doesn't need to. He is not threatened by her depth, her intensity, or her humanity. And in that space, something rare happens. Respect emerges, attraction stabilizes, trust begins to take root. So the question is not whether you can control the emotional environment around you. The question is whether you can regulate yourself within it. Because the man who can do that becomes a place of order in a chaotic world. And that is not just attractive, that is transformative. The second question a woman is always asking, often without ever articulating it, is whether a man's values remain intact when there is no audience to reward him for them. This is not a cynical question, it is a necessary one. Because consistency is the difference between character and performance, and human beings are remarkably good at detecting that difference over time. Anyone can sound principled when it costs them nothing. Anyone can speak about loyalty, honesty, responsibility, and commitment when those ideas are abstract. The real test emerges in moments of inconvenience, fatigue, temptation, or social pressure. That is when values stop being ideas and start being behaviors. And a woman who has lived long enough, or loved deeply enough, knows to watch for that distinction. What she is scanning for is coherence. Coherence means that what you say, what you believe, and what you do are aligned. It means there is no hidden self that contradicts the public one. It means that your behavior does not shift depending on who is watching or what you stand to gain. This kind of internal alignment produces trust almost automatically because it removes uncertainty. You are predictable in the best possible way. Not rigid, but reliable. Inconsistent men often mistake intensity for sincerity. They speak passionately, promise expansively, and declare values loudly, but their actions fluctuate. They are present when it feels good, absent when it feels difficult. They justify small betrayals, rationalize broken commitments, and frame their inconsistency as complexity or freedom. Over time, this creates confusion. And confusion is corrosive to trust. The nervous system never quite relaxes when it cannot predict behavior. An older man who has cultivated integrity understands that reputation is what people think of you, but character is who you are when no one is there to witness it. He does not need constant validation because his identity is not built on external approval. He knows what he stands for, and that knowledge guides his decisions quietly, without spectacle. He keeps his word not because it makes him look good, but because breaking it would fracture his sense of self. This is why small behaviors matter so much. How you treat service workers, how you speak about people who are not present, whether you follow through on men or commitments, whether your boundaries are clear and consistent. These are not details, they are signals, and a woman notices them because they reveal the underlying structure of a man's psyche. Consistency does not mean perfection. It does not mean never failing or never changing. It means that when you fall short, you take responsibility without deflection. You do not outsource blame. You do not rewrite history. You do not gaslight reality to protect your ego. Accountability is one of the strongest indicators of integrity because it shows that truth matters more to you than comfort. A man who lacks this coherence often compensates with charisma or authority. He believes that confidence can substitute for reliability. But confidence without consistency eventually rings hollow. The initial attraction may be strong, but it is unstable. Over time, admiration turns into skepticism. Desire turns into caution, and what might have been a deep bond remains superficial because it never feels anchored. What draws a woman toward an older man is not the promise that he knows everything. It is the sense that he lives by something, that he has principles that organize his life and limit his impulses, that he does not drift according to mood or opportunity. This creates a psychological environment where trust can grow, because trust is built on repeated evidence, not declarations. There is also a deeper philosophical dimension here. To live coherently is to take responsibility for your being in the world. It is to recognize that your actions ripple outward, shaping not only your own life, but the lives of those around you. When a man understands this, he acts with a certain gravity, not heaviness, but weight. His presence carries meaning because it is grounded in intention. And this is what ultimately earns respect, not dominance, not control. Respect emerges when others can rely on you without fear of hidden motives or sudden reversals. It emerges when your yes means yes and your no means no. That clarity is deeply calming. It allows intimacy to develop without constant vigilance. So the challenge is not to appear virtuous, but to become integrated, to close the gap between who you claim to be and how you actually live. Because the man who does that becomes trustworthy not through force, but through consistency. And that kind of trust is rare. It is built slowly. It is maintained quietly. And once it exists, it becomes the foundation for every meaningful relationship you will ever have.